Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Just Transition Pavilion, hosted by the ILO and the European Commission. Very, very excited to see so many of you here. My name is Mette. I work in the Green Jobs team in the ILO, and I'm really excited to guide you through this session today, where we will be launching the Green Jobs for Youth Pact. We'll start with a short little video of the pact, and then we'll get started. All right, thanks for that. Okay, so this was a small teaser of the Green Jobs for Youth Pact. And without further ado, I'm going to hand the mic to Mustafa Kamal Gay, Global Coordinator of the Green Jobs Program and my boss at the ILO. So over to you, Mustafa.
Thanks, Mette. In Green Job, there are no bosses. We're all generals and soldiers at the same time. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for the 1.2 billion young people around the world, climate change is not just about securing a planet which is safe for us to live as a home, but it is also to ensure a job and livelihoods for the future. These two can go hand in hand. Our data shows that investments that can be made in the green economy, including in renewable energy, in construction, in sustainable agriculture, in transport, can deliver 8.5 million jobs for young people by 2030. A just transition is about having no one left behind, including the young people, and I must say, who are the majority of people on the planet today. Therefore, the ILO, UNEP, and UNICEF, Generation Unlimited, are joining our forces together on the Green Jobs for Youth Pact, an initiative for and by young people. The pact aims to create 1 million new green jobs with existing employers, with a particular focus on young women. It aims to assist the greening of 1.5 million existing jobs through skilling, reskilling, and upskilling, as well as the greening of existing businesses themselves. And lastly, it will support 10,000 young women and men entrepreneurs to start a sustainable business. The pact will do all of this in a holistic manner and across what we call the 3 green E's. First, employment creation and entrepreneurship, where we will work across the macro, meso, and micro levels to foster more and better green jobs for young people. This includes policy coherent employment strategies and social dialogue involving young people. We would work to boost the demand for a green workforce by greening businesses, particularly the small and micro enterprises, and fostering green entrepreneurship. Second, environmental education, where the focus will be on skilling, upskilling, and reskilling for young people. This is a key to enable the unleashing of the energy that young people have for enterprise development, entrepreneurship, and job creation, with an effort on the education sector. Third, empowerment of young people and engagement with them. We will be ensuring that young people are at the core of the pact and that we will be working with the youth advisory group, not as a stakeholder, but as an actor in the design and implementation of the pact. So all this work is already well underway, and we are happy to launch the pact today. And I think we have a very strong presence of young people today. We are with you, we are together for you, so let's make this a success, not one of the talks that comes out of the COPs, but something that will deliver concrete results for human well-being, ensuring sustainability today and for the future. Thank you so much. We look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you so much, Mustafa. And with that quick introduction and call to action, I'm very happy to be able to invite our co-host of the pavilion, but also one of the people that and stakeholders that we've been discussing and benefiting a lot from in terms of developing this pact. Thank you so much to DJ Korte for coming to the stage and giving his remarks here. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mette. And I'm also delighted to be here this afternoon in this fantastic pavilion that we opened only a few hours ago. And already now we have the first sort of new event on a topic that is really goes to the heart of everything that climate change, I think, is standing for. So I'm delighted to participate here in the launch of the UNEP, ILO and UNICEF Green Jobs for Youth Pact today. I mean, it goes without saying that this initiative is extremely relevant and also extremely timely. We are facing an accelerated climate change progress all across the planet, and the issues that people are dealing with are compounded very much also by other problems, energy crisis, a war on the borders of Europe or in Europe, and staggering inflation rates. So all these factors together should only make us work faster and accelerate our policies against the impact of climate change and to accelerate our green transition. For this to be able to work, we need to do a lot of things, and skills are, I think, the crucial element here. If we get it right, and it's an if, it doesn't happen by itself. It will require some tough policy measures across the globe. But if we get it right, the green transition offers many, many opportunities. And with the right accompanying measures, a triple dividend. Reduce, of course, emissions and improve the environment. Create quality jobs in the transition. And thirdly, also improve welfare and well-being overall. As I said, for this we will need policy measures to happen, and this is where the youth already comes in. Let me mention four policy measures that I think are absolutely vital to make the transition successful. And again, I should not go into details because this is a bit what we discussed earlier on today. First is to ensure adequate social protection systems for workers who are in job transitions as a result of climate change. Secondly, promote and support green employment, green jobs. Thirdly, massive investments in retraining, reskilling and upskilling for the new jobs in the green and circular economy. And fourthly, also address the lack of basic green and digital skills, as well as any other labor and skills shortages in green sectors. And in all these areas, as I said, in all these policy actions, young people deserve our particular attention. And this is very true in the European Year of Youth, which is 2022. Young people are at the forefront in this transformation, and their commitment and energy is decisive. And of course, it's also our responsibility as the older generation to leave a better future to the next. In this sense, climate justice is also intergenerational justice. Let me share some interesting results from a recent Eurobarometer polling exercise in the European Union on the fair and green transition. It turned out that 88% of EU citizens overall support the goal of a green transition that leaves no one behind. And 77% of the Europeans feel a personal responsibility to act to limit climate change. So these are very, very high figures. The Eurobarometer also told us that 2 out of 3 young Europeans, 64%, believes that being in a job that contributes to the green transition is important to them. However, only 45% of young Europeans think that their current skills allow them to contribute to such green transitions. So these figures again amplify and underline why this pact is such a good thing. The Green Jobs for Youth Pact is particularly relevant because it brings together 2 crucial elements of the green transition: the younger generation and the need for green upskilling and green reskilling. That's the first point, why I like it so much. The second point is it establishes, and Mustafa already referred to those, it establishes very clear and also I think bold targets to reach in the coming years. They are challenging but attainable objectives if we all work together. And I think it is very important to be clear and to fix clear targets and to have a transparent process, because talking about these things is easy, but we will not get very far by only talking. We need to have targets and bold action. The third reason why I like it so much, it's that it also ensures the full involvement of all the stakeholders in its governance structure, including, of course, the young people themselves, and not just as observers, but as full members of the governance of the pact. And this, I think, is also absolutely essential and nevertheless quite innovative. Finally, the pact is also, I think, fully in line with what we are doing within the European Union. We have quite an elaborate skills agenda. We have a pact for skills, and a lot of other things, and a lot of money to push this process forward within the European Union. Its relevance, the relevance of this pact across the globe, is also relevant, as all the countries will need green skills for the young generation to benefit from green transition. I therefore strongly invite both governments at all the levels, stakeholders and also companies. LinkedIn is a very good example today, to join the pact. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wait, thank you. Oh, thanks. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for sharing the numbers from the barometer, taking the temperature of the attitudes in Europe, in the European Union. And also thank you for your constructive feedback. Glad to hear there are so many things that you like about the pact. Great. Next on the agenda, I wanted to invite my colleague, Ormila Sakar, to the stage. And I think I left maybe the clicker on there. But no?
Should I start?
There we go.
Great. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ormila. I had programs with the Generation Unlimited UNICEF, actually former ILO. So great to be among friends with all of you. Really excited to be here today and with this esteemed panel as well, which marks the launch of this exciting Green Jobs for Youth Pact. Really, I think we all agree that the time is to act now. We need to act urgently, and we're facing a planetary crisis. We heard about this yesterday at the World Leaders Summit and time again in every session. But at the same time, I think we can all agree that we have a tremendous opportunity to overcome the twin challenges of climate change and youth unemployment or underemployment. So we're really in an unprecedented moment in history where we've come together as ILO, UNEP, and UNICEF's Generation Unlimited to transform this kind of looming crisis into a historic opportunity through a just and green transition for the world's young women and men. And that's why I'm excited about this partnership. So we know that investments in renewable energy, construction, sustainable agriculture, recycling, and waste management have the potential to create millions of additional jobs, and we heard that from the speakers before. The multiplier effect of green jobs is undeniable. It can help offset any employment losses in the fossil fuel industry. We also know that nearly all jobs need to evolve, with 40% at risk due to climate change, since they are industries dependent on a healthy climate and ecosystem. But then the question is, are policymakers, are workers, employers, and educators ready for the green transition? Is the business climate conducive to job creation in the green economy? And most importantly, are young people equipped with the necessary skills to leverage climate commitments and access decent and green jobs? So this is why we are launching this pact and partnership to address all these big questions and encourage you all to join us in order to achieve a green and just transition for youth. And really today's young people, they hold our shared future is in their hands. And with the largest generation of young people in history driving social change, driving economic growth, their potential is truly unlimited. So many young people are already driving change around the world, either by pursuing green jobs, starting up their own sustainable enterprises, or leading climate action all around the world. But there are also many more young people that want to be actively engaged, but they lack the information or the resources to be able to do that. So to ensure that young people are engaged at every step of the way, we're setting up this youth advisory board that we heard about earlier. And at UNICEF Generation Unlimited, and our youth-led partner organizations, there's really a wealth of best practice that we have accumulated on how to meaningfully partner with young people. And this will be central to the implementation of the pact. So ultimately, we really need a public-private youth partnership to make change and bring together governments with young people and the private sector. So the final point I wanted to make is around private sector engagement, because that'll be crucial to unlocking innovation. There are already a wide range of companies that are paving the road or the way for green, digital, and just transition, are already joining the pact as corporate front runners. And it's incredibly heartening to see so many of them here at COP. And LinkedIn has been one of the supporting the pact right from the start, and wonderful, we'll hear more from Alan Blue on the panel. The green transition and the creation of more and better jobs for young people will not happen without all key players rallying around this objective. So we invite all of you, all the partners, to join us and the pact towards skilling and connecting young people with green and sustainable livelihoods. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uma. And that brings us to all the people that we have been hinting at through the last through interventions. I would like to invite my panel to join me here on stage. Let's start with Quinn Runkle, who's the Director of Education at Students Organizing for Sustainability, the UK. Please welcome Noreen Kennedy, Senior Vice President of Policy and Global Strategy at the USCIB. And I'm actually not entirely sure if Ms. Boitumelo is here yet. Oh, excellent, sorry. Hi, we didn't have a chance to meet yet. Who's the Social Development Policy Coordinator at the Congress of South Africa Trade Union. And then, last but not least, please welcome Alan Blue, co-founder of LinkedIn, to the stage. Thank you. All right. So, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I've been really looking forward to this day, and I know that I can speak on both behalf of the ILO, UNEP, and UNICEF's Generation Unlimited when we say that we're so happy that you're here to discuss this important topic with us today. I wanted to start off actually because I think there's quite a lot of excitement in the room, and I actually wanted to start off with asking you, Alan, why is it that you, as an individual company, is excited about something that the UN is trying to start together with their partners and youth?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey everybody. So at LinkedIn, we have. Y'all hear me? Okay.
Is it okay?
Pretty good. Hear me? Okay, great. So, hi everybody. So at LinkedIn, we have lots of information, which comes from the fact that we've got 850 million members in LinkedIn's network. So we have lots of information about what's happening in the job market and what's happening specifically in the world of green skills. And one thing is really obvious to us. It's that sorry about that. So it's basically that right now we're roughly at the point where the green skills that good.
Alan, do you want to use this one instead?
Let's see if it works.
Might-
All right. Whoa. Much better. All right. So we'll try to do this as little feedback as possible. So right now, the green skills that exist in the world are just about keeping up with demand for the green jobs that are being created. In the last years, basically, the number of roles in the green economy has grown 240% on LinkedIn. So it's huge growth. And we're actually right at the beginning of the acceleration. So we're going to reach a point real soon where there aren't enough people with green skills to be able to make sure the transition occurs quickly. So we've got real urgency to get people into the workforce able to make sure that green transition actually works. And what's more, we have the same problem we've had with so many other things. We have inequity between the people who have the skills and access to them and the people who do not. And if you're trying to build a system where countries everywhere in the world and people everywhere in the world can take advantage of the boom that this economy actually represents, we got to figure out a way to make those skills more equal and more evenly distributed across the world. That is why we are excited about this effort, because that is what you are attempting to do.
Thanks a lot, Alan. And I think that that is one example of both why an individual company could be interested, and that is, of course, only what one company can do. And we were talking a lot about the skills supply, right? How, what kind of skills young people should be equipped with. But what is also really important is the demand side. Of course, that's an individual company, but it is certainly also the role of the employers' organizations, and they represent the larger private sector as such. And Noreen, I was actually quite interested in hearing from you and your perspective. What is the role of employers' organizations in terms of fostering and promoting more green jobs for young people? And I think, yeah.
So thanks for the question. On behalf of the International Organization of Employers, let me just say how delighted we are to be here. And thanks to the organizers, thrilled to be part of, the excitement is contagious, thrilled to be part of this launch for the Green Jobs for Youth Pact. IOE welcomes the pact. We look forward to working with ILO, UNICEF, and the other partners to get it up and running to its full capacity and potential. And to do that, that's what we hopefully can bring to the table, our considerable network of employers' federations all over the world, and we look forward to that multiplying effect that we can offer on all of the E's that were mentioned by Mustafa at the beginning, the 3 E's. We could think of some other E's. So my organization is the U.S. Employers Rep in the ILO, and I think one of the things that we really think is so critical is inclusive and practical multilateralism, engaging business and solutions, cooperation in the multilateral system, working with other partners. And if this pact, if that isn't practical and inclusive multilateralism, I don't know what it is. So it's right in our wheelhouse. We represent, and IOE represents, all the sectors that are part of the green job and transition picture, and even some of the ones that weren't mentioned in the very comprehensive list. So like a company like LinkedIn, the multiplying effect, the catalytic effect that you can have working with every sector. You know, we can be so much more than the sum of our parts. Another reason why we're here and we're very excited about this is that this is clearly an idea whose time has come. It's not just here at the UN Framework Convention, but also in New York, where my organization is based. We have a lot of focus right now on engaging youth, The UN Secretary General has delivered his Our Common Agenda report, which includes a big focus on youth and really great proposals about how to empower youth, how to engage youth, to make the UN more meaningful working with youth. So this is something that is of direct interest to us, and we really are excited to be here and looking forward to being part of the project going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noreen. That's great to hear. So that was a perspective from the demand side, right? We really have to boost the demand side for green skills in order to support the transition. As Alan was saying, that demand is already really high, and we're actually looking more towards the skill shortage than necessarily a lack of demand. So I'm really interested to move over to you, Portumelo, because the workers really stand to win quite a lot here from this transition, and there's a lot of possibility for engaging early on and creating momentum. So I was really interested in hearing from you, what is sort of the role you see for workers and labor union in terms of supporting more and better green jobs for young people, and how are you already now engaging with young people in your group?
Sure, thank you very much. So, should I bring it closer? Okay, let me just do this. So basically, the role of workers, worker organizations and trade unions is quite important in kind of advocating for young people, especially because one of the main objectives of unions and trade unions is to protect workers. So when we speak about the decent job agenda, that's something that we've been demanding for and calling for when we speak to a just transition. So it's very important in that we're here to ensure that young people get into jobs that are meaningful. Young people are able and are aware of the responsibility that comes with being part of the just transition. It's a huge responsibility because moving to a low carbon climate resilient economy requires us to be ready for it. So what we're trying to do, what worker organization basically the role is to ensure that we prioritize young people, that the reorientation of the economy is based on ensuring that young people are engaged, young people are protected, and that our pivotal role is basically to ensure that there is sufficient knowledge and skills imparted to young people through active lobbying for change. I think one of the main things that we've been speaking of is a transformation of the worker organization. So the participation of young people is going to be very important because they will be the ones that are future leaders. They will be the ones that need to then further advocate for a just transition through their participation and their active participation. I think what we've been doing as the trade union movement and the labor movement in its entirety is that, especially in South Africa, we've been trying to ensure that we have what we call the young workers of the unions. So these are constitutionalized structures in the union. These are not people that are coming in as a by-the-way factor. These are people that are coming in that are specifically seen and that are specifically voted into to be representatives of the young workers. So when they come to speak of issues of young workers, they come to speak of issues of young workers from a mandated position and not from a position that is ill-informed. So the information that comes through to the trade union as a mother body becomes one that is influenced by what workers are speaking about on the ground. So we're not trying to replicate the past. What we're doing is championing for a new kind of worker, a new worker that is able to speak to issues that are pertaining to what are the issues that are kind of key at the stage. The issues that the just transition brings ahead are not issues that we've seen before. When we speak of decent jobs and when we speak of wages, workers are not demanding wages because they feel that they are not important. You know, wages are not an after effect. So what we're trying to do basically is ensure that workers are well informed of what they need to speak on, that they are actually benefiting from this just transition.
I think that's really interesting to hear, and thank you so much for giving that concrete example of how to engage with young people in the labor union in South Africa. And I also know that there are also young people a part of the trade union delegation here. You also have young people that are wearing several hats as a trade unionist, but also, of course, as a youth and an activist, etc. So that's an excellent example also from South Africa there. All right, so today we've been zooming in a little bit on skills. I think skills is really key in this. This is also what we know at the ILO, that both skilling of young workers and reskilling of existing workers, etc., that is really important. And I wanted to hear from you, Quinn. What is it that you see that young people are learning today? And what should they be learning in the future? Because I mean, the world is getting more educated. People are, illiteracy is going down. More people are going to school, etc., etc. So, what is it that you see people are learning today, and what is it that they should learn more of in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Meta. And just to say thank you so much for inviting us to be part of this panel, and indeed for the youth representation in the Pact as well. We're really delighted to have representation on the Youth Advisory Board, and I think that youth leadership in shaping and informing what this work looks like is just absolutely essential. So really delighted to be involved in this project, both on behalf of SOS UK, but also our umbrella organization, SOS International, which brings together student-led organizations right around the world focused on sustainability action, largely through students' unions. And so in response to your question, you know, what does education look like right now, and is it fit for purpose? I think if we really reflect, even considering our own educational experiences, right, that however long ago those might have been, it's really not fit for purpose. It's really, for the most part, education is not preparing us for a 1.5 degree future. When we think about the learning that students are having in the classroom right through all phases of education, right from early years into primary, secondary, further higher education, it's missing the mark on preparing young people, whether or not they go on to be leaders in their societies, you know, presidents, prime ministers, chief executives. We have the evidence here, right, that our leaders are not receiving the education that they necessarily need to take leadership action to achieve a 1.5 degree future. Now, why does that problem exist, right? That problem exists because the education system is largely didactic. People are taught to memorize facts, memorize knowledge, regurgitate that information for assessment, and we know that that's not a fair reflection in the working world, right? Education does not, for the most part, prepare us to deal with the uncertainty, the unknowns, the collaborative working, all of the ways in which we will build the solutions that we need in the face of the climate and ecological emergency. The sorts of skills that we need to be developing are not the skills that we practice in education. However, we know that students want an education system that reflects that. So in our international research, 92% of young people said that sustainability should be incorporated and promoted meaningfully through all aspects of their college and university experience. That's not just geography students or environmental scientists, right? That's 92% of all students surveyed through our students' unions, national students' unions around the world. Similarly, 40% of students in that report said that they had no coverage of issues relating to sustainable development in their degree. Right, so when we think about the skills gap that Alan talks about, identifying this through LinkedIn, right, of course students are leaving further and higher education without the skills because they're identifying that gap for themselves, right? 40% of them say that this simply is not being covered. So, to answer the last part of your question, what should it look like? It's twofold, right? It's thinking about what we learn, right? And indeed making sure that the content of education is fit for purpose. But it's also thinking about how we learn, right? And thinking about the sorts of educational pedagogies, the sorts of teaching and learning methods that actually prepare students for the world of work, right? a form of education that builds on partnership, where young people have a voice heard in their education, where they're able to co-shape what that education looks like, and we're able to develop within them the skills, knowledge, attributes, and indeed values that will enable them to lead this change in their future places of work.
Amazing, super concrete, and thank you so much for bringing those numbers in from your survey. Very, very interesting indeed. And I think that is really the education sector, the education institutions and the gap there. And I wanted to move on to our social partners here to hear about what is it that employers can do, what is it that workers can do in terms of closing the skill gap. Because of course there's a lot of stuff happening in the education system, etc. And what, for example, let's start with you, Noreen. What is it that, for example, employers could do to help close the skills gap between sort of the skills demanded and the skills supplied?
I don't know if this is my official answer, but I was so inspired by Quinn's comments. So I think the first thing we can do as employers is we can listen. We can be good listeners, because when you were talking about education that young people receive, including formerly young people like myself, it's also about the education that they can offer. The extent to which they can teach us and have been teaching us and have been showing us what they're capable of and what they're looking to employers and to society as a whole. One thing that we can do as employers, I've already mentioned, is just take advantage of a huge network that we have all around the world, developing countries. The world today, now I'm going to start quoting from our common agenda, so forgive me. The world today is the home of the largest generation of young people in history, something like 1.2 billion people, close to 90% of whom live in developing countries. These young people have never been more educated or more connected, as you have said, but they also face some significant obstacles. So really, as employers, we have to look carefully at what those obstacles are. Some of them are well known to us with respect to issues that we face as employers for the people that we work with, no matter what their age. Informality, a huge challenge in developing countries. Reaching SMEs in developing countries, what can we do? And SMEs make up 90% of the business community. So that's another opportunity, definitely, for us to not just talk about skilling and green jobs for the leaders of the business community, like LinkedIn and the kinds of companies that I work with in my organization, Fortune 500 companies, but really upstream and downstream as well. So I think those are some opportunities right away. We're certainly looking at education, so not strictly confined to skilling. For example, earlier this year, the United Nations had an education summit. We were very active there. Another example, looking forward to 2023, there's going to be the 5th conference of the UN focusing on least developed countries. Here again, the International Organization of Employers is going to work with our employers' federations in those LDCs. And this is a real opportunity for us to bring the pact into those conversations as well. So those are just some quick examples.
Thanks a lot, Noreen. And how about you, Boitumelo? How do you see that labor unions, workers, what kind of role, what can we do in order to close the skills gap that we are mentioning here?
I think Quinn kind of set the tone with regards to the education question, which is very important. Trade unions and workers have the opportunity to, through social dialogue, lobby and engage on ensuring that there firstly is a change to curriculum. We can't keep, like Quinn has said, regurgitating, teaching people that go to school, you memorize, go to write that exam, and you're done, and the qualification is it. I think that would be very important, firstly, to start addressing the curriculum from all levels. I don't think we should start with it at a university level. This is starting to nourish and ensure that as people progress through the education system, they are ready. I think the other part is that prioritizing and investing in vocational education and training would be very important to ensure that the training is going to allow for these young people to be able to then get into the system ready, get into the system with the sufficient training and knowledge. I think also there needs to be meaningful engagement with young workers, even those in the labor market currently. There needs to be meaningful engagement that we ensure that their needs and interests are addressed, and that they are people that are getting into this low carbon economy that we speak of through a just transition, that they understand themselves. I think further to this, we need a lot of skilling, upskilling, and reskilling, especially for those currently in the labor force, because it's going to be very unfortunate if these are workers that have been through a particular system and are left behind because there's a transition. So basically ensuring that they are also adequately trained and adequately prepared for this low carbon economy, these green jobs. And these are not abstract jobs, so we need to make sure that they understand what they're getting themselves into.
That's great. Thank you so much. I think that brings me to you, Alan, because as an individual company, not a small one, you also do have quite a lot of people internally employed, etc. And you are, as Noreen actually mentioned, not necessarily in this number overview that Mustafa was giving earlier, because you're a part of the digital economy. And I was wondering, what is the role in for a company like yours in terms of greening skills? What is the role of, what can you even do maybe internally? So could you say a little bit about, in terms of sort of, we were talking about these 1 million green jobs that PAC will create, the 1 million green jobs that we will, or the 1 million existing jobs that we will help greening, etc. Can you talk a little bit about like how can a company like LinkedIn contribute to those goals, both internally and also externally?
Yeah, happy to. So once we began to see the need for green skills training, we began to develop green skills training on LinkedIn's platform. So I don't know if you know or not, we have this thing called LinkedIn Learning, which is basically where people can come and learn a huge variety of business skills. So far we've added 30 green skill training courses, and part of our work with the PACT is going to be making sure that all of our employees are taking advantage of that. But I mean, we're a sizable company, but the real impact will come, we hope, when we encourage thousands and thousands of other companies to do the same thing with our training programs. We have millions of companies on LinkedIn who use it to hire and also use it to think about what the future for their workforces may look like. So we really want those companies to take the same step on training that we have. I can only say, and it just based on what you all have said, I think that there are tremendous opportunities for educators of all kinds and companies to work together. Whether education is fit for purpose is in fact, at least somewhat, a function of how close the relationship is between the world you're going into, the job you will have down the line, and how close is their relationship with the educators who are preparing people for that. And then similarly with labor, labor unions are a tremendously valuable mechanism for training this set of skills. And it would be great to have a conversation about the way in which, I mean, many of the things that labor unions need to train are not things you can learn on LinkedIn Learning, but maybe they should be. The final thing I'll add here is that, and something that we're encouraging everyone we're speaking to consider. This COP is about implementation. We would love to see the people who are doing the negotiations think about the role that skills will play in terms of enabling that transition to actually occur smoothly. And we would love to have, for instance, part of the way in which we think about all the things that need to happen and the ways we set up regulation and the way policy is directed, that it includes this skills lens so that we can make all of the investments in technology and in society that we need to, but most importantly that we have workers who are going to be able to speed that transition forward.
That's great. Thank you so much. And what does that mean, Alan? How many are employed now on LinkedIn? So how many employees do you think roughly are going to do these internal greening
it's a great question.
training?
Well, I'll keep after them until they're done. It's about 20,000.
20,000, about 20,000. Great. So we're on our way towards our 1 million jobs greened already. That's great. Okay, so that actually leads me to my last part. I wanted to circle back a little bit towards this sort of increasing the demand side. So one thing is the supply of labor, supply of knowledge, supply of hands. But something that the Pact also want to do is support the greening of businesses, support especially the greening of SMEs. So I don't know if anyone here wants to come in terms of like how they see supporting the greening of SMEs. I would be very interested in case Noreen you want to come in and talk a little bit about the barriers, but also the opportunities specifically for SMEs.
Well, I think that we've already mentioned this, but I'll give a couple of examples where, first of all, there's a lot of opportunity from the IOE, from headquarters, and from IOE federations in different countries to work together with our partners in countries and to try to do capacity building and sort of climb this learning curve with them, help them climb a little higher and a little faster. I mean, we've seen examples of this in the climate change space. I mentioned them in another side event just a little while ago. At the Conference of Parties in Marrakesh, for example, we saw the Moroccan Employers Federation launch an initiative that's still running to this day, in which they worked with other employers federations on the continent, both North African, Sub-Saharan, and it was really a kind of a sharing of good practice, raising of good practice, and I think there's a lot of potential for this through that kind of business to business, employers federation to employers federation, and again, SMEs being the lion's share of employers federations in most countries. Another great example, when the COP was in Lima, and the host country, Peru, actually brought constituencies that were active in this process to come to Lima and work with local constituencies. So for us to come from a UNFCCC setting and actually help educate and listen to our partners and colleagues, employers federations in Lima in Peru, and understand, again, mainly from SMEs, what was preoccupying them, what would be most helpful for them. So I think there's a lot of peer-to-peer learning and potential through the IOE network, and I think through this pact maybe we could even expand that circle and make it more of a multi-stakeholder venture going forward. Thank you.
That sounds great. I love the brainstorming happening as we speak. That's amazing. So, Quinn, this is pretty clear, right? So we have the private sector, the social partners. Then we kind of circle back towards the role of youth themselves. I mean, I think I almost feel a little bit bad about asking this because I feel like the youth are already doing so much. They're already working so hard. All the activism that happens here is to a large extent unpaid. They're already working really hard on this transition, working really hard on getting employable skills, getting a future. In the end, they are the ones that are screaming for the future of the jobs. So could you tell us a little bit about, like, what is it that you see that the role of youth is in something like the Pact, and in closing this skills gap? What is the role of someone like your organization, and how could the Pact, for example, support something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, there's loads, as you say, that young people are doing in this space. One of the things that I've found really heartening just in the last year since COP26 is the work that young people are doing with their departments of education on a national level, looking really, really critically at education strategies, at national curriculums, and considering the ways in which these necessary changes to the education system can be made. There's some really inspiring examples of what this looks like in Finland, in Liberia, in Nigeria, in the UK, of young people working in really direct partnership with their education ministries, reshaping education to focus on exactly what we're talking about today, right? Focusing more in on hands-on sorts of learning opportunities where students are developing the skills and the attributes to be prepared for these sorts of green jobs that we're looking at. And the demand for that sort of education is really clear. So we do a national survey of students every year that considers students' future career ambitions. And one of the really interesting things that we find, this research is from the UK in particular, is that 2/3 of students 2/3 of students say that they would willingly take a role that is paid less than the average graduate salary to work for an organization that has a good environmental and social record. Now that's slightly problematic, right? Because you don't want to say that green jobs pay less, because that is really not the case, right? But in the UK context, it's really interesting because the British government is really focused on measuring the quality of education based on rate of employment and graduate salary. Right, and when you compare that with what students are actually saying, when 2/3 of students are saying, well, actually, salary isn't the most important thing to me here. It's about having a salary where I can have a good quality of life, where I can meet my needs, but actually having the highest paid possible job isn't the most important thing when I think about my future career path. It's about having a job where I work for an organization that matches my values. And 80% of students say that it is really integral to them that they work in a role where they feel they can make a meaningful difference on social and environmental issues. Right, so for me, that's where that second piece of 1 million greening jobs comes in really nicely, right? Because 80% of young people are saying right now, well, actually, whatever industry I'm working in, whatever sector I'm working in, 80% of young people are saying, I want that to be a green job, right? I want that to be a job where I feel I'm making a meaningful difference. So we know that there's that enormous demand from students. We know that we need to shift the dialogue a little bit, right? Around how we measure success of education systems, right? And not just make it about rates of employment and salary, but also consider exactly the things we're talking about today, right? The quality of the jobs that we're talking about, the meaningfulness of the jobs that we're talking about, and indeed the nature of the jobs that we're talking about as well.
That's amazing, Quinn. Thank you so much. I don't know if there is any final comment. Yes? Yes?
So I just want to add one quick thing to that. So we see the same thing. We know how important it is that for young people especially, that they find jobs that align with their values. So we've just released on LinkedIn the ability for companies to speak about what their commitments are, both on the social side and on the climate side, and make that something that you, when you're looking for your next career, can make part of your search. So you should check it out.
I think this panel is also illustrating the need for social dialogue. It's actually where social dialogue at play right now. There's business, there's the civil society is what we refer to other organizations that are not in the confines of business and labor. But this is an indication that we need to start talking, we need to start implementing, and that there's an absolute need for this pact to be successful. And I think if we're working together, we can actually contribute to young workers, young people being in meaningful employment.
And since I have the microphone, I just would say let's also not lose sight of young people themselves as job creators, as entrepreneurs, as green entrepreneurs. So much innovation is brought to the table by young people in the private sector. And I think the more that we can empower them to use one of those E's and really make them a focus, in addition to the work we do as employers federations, I think if we miss that opportunity, we miss a lot of important potential and impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much to my panel. Let's give them a big hand. And And that brings me to my last point, which is I would like to welcome my last colleague, Michael Alexander from UNEP, to take the floor and share his closing remarks and reflections, because we did a lot of talking about the visions and goals, and I think Michael is here to talk a little bit about next steps and a reflection from today. So thank you so much. No, this one is bad.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? When I was young, when I was a youth, which I feel like wasn't that long ago, but apparently time has crept up on me, I thought I was cool. I thought I was woke. I thought I was an eco-warrior. I was a scout. And when I fast forward 20 years later, where in my most recent role before UNEP, I worked with WWF in campaigns and advocacy, working with youth groups a lot in Asia Pacific, which is not always an easy area to do campaigning and advocacy as a youth. I was blown away by these youth. They would have thrown me under, they were so much smarter than I was back in the day. They were so much more aware of things. They were asking questions that I hadn't even thought about. There was a depth to their thinking that I hadn't even got to in discussions in our campaigning work. So when I think about that, I think we're actually behind where they are at in many ways. And they've done this all completely on their own. They haven't had the support and the infrastructure and the resources that we're talking about today. So imagine what they could be like if they had some of the support that's been outlined by my panelists here today. We have a lot to learn from them, but when I do talks with universities where I live in Singapore at the moment, I dread the question that comes from plucky young youth at universities doing their master's programs or whatever it is. They come up and I know what they're going to ask me. How did you get your job? I want that job. I want to get into the work you do. And the truth is, Alan spoke about inequity. We are privileged to be here today. We are privileged to do the work we do. It might be frustrating sometimes, but it's not easy to get into. And so I think addressing this inequity is such an opportunity, not just for these youth, but also for us, for our future. Because 20 years from now, 5 years from now, however many years from now, I wonder who is going to be standing up here today and how they got there. And I think that's a lot about what this pact is going to be addressing. And that's why I'm so excited and why UNEP is so excited. And I have to thank all of our partners and people on the stage talking about this today. We're so excited about this because when I was at WWF, we sometimes talked when we were doing campaign planning about breaking the circle of denial. When I think about the circle of denial when it comes to plastic pollution, in the circle of denial, consumers say, it's not my fault I get so many plastic bags from the shop gave it to me. The shopkeepers say, it's not my fault I have to give out so many plastic bags, I got it that way from the manufacturers. The manufacturers say, it's not my fault, the government needs to do something. And of course the government says, well, if only those bloody consumers would stop taking so many plastic bags. So the circle of denial is really about systems thinking and knowing where are the chinks in the system that we need to fix. And we've heard them all today. And that's what this pact is about, looking with real resources and real depth at tackling the circle of denial. That means youth are not equipped enough, I should say, to get these green jobs of the future. We're terribly excited about this. UNEP can't wait to keep working with you all. And if anyone's interested in finding out more, I'm sure Meta and other colleagues will be happy to take more questions. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your COP.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much for coming by. And we'll hang around for another chat, and we'll stay in touch. Thanks.